In April of this year, Bruce Beck, who I knew as Buffalo, passed away. He was an author that I published on my website, nantucketebooks.com. And more than that, he was a great storyteller, a raconteur in the very best sense of that word. He was also a mentor to me with my writing, and I very much considered him a friend. I met Buffalo a few years ago when I went out to a town way east of Denver, out on the plains of Colorado called Cope. I'd gone out there to investigate a phone booth in their city park that had been stolen. And going out there and meeting people in the town, I had been told, you got to go into Buffalo's Last Stand, which was the only store in town, because the owner is this really interesting guy. So I went in and I met him. He ran this really unusual store, Buffalo's Last Stand, and everything was Buffalo memorabilia. Buffalo Springfield 8-track tapes, any wine bottle that had a buffalo on it, buffalo nickels. What else did he have? Like action figures of M. Bison from the Street Fighter video games, the Morning Thunder coffee that Celestial Seasonings makes. And so he had all this incredible Buffalo memorabilia, magnets, postcards, and he also had a bookstore in the back. And it was some of the most interesting selections of books I'd ever come across. For one thing, he had an impressive collection of Harlan Ellison, who at the time, it was almost impossible for me to find any of Ellison's work in a bookstore. So the fact that he had so many, I thought was pretty impressive. And a great collection of horror, a little bit of science fiction as well. Things that you would never find just going out and even at a lot of used bookstores. So we had some similar interests, and that got us talking. And I had mentioned that I was starting a publishing company, and he handed me this manuscript that was stories about a repo man. And every chapter would be a different car that he repossessed. And I remember sitting in my car near the park in Cope and reading through it, and it actually ended up being really good. And I went back in and said, I'd love to get this out there for people. And that was the beginning of our friendship. And that book later became Tales of a Metal Fisherman, which is on my website. A really fun book of what I like to call urban adventure. And so that's how I met him, and we kept in touch after that. And it was hard to go a few months without making that long drive out to Cope to see him, because he was that nice of a guy to have conversations with. And he'd had an interesting life, it seemed. Another book he had was loosely based on his own life. When he was much younger, he'd had a traumatic brain injury, and he'd had amnesia for many years, and he'd claimed that he'd recovered his memory through journaling, and he was really interested in Jungian psychology. He talked a lot about like meeting your opposite, and that was a way that he helped recover his memories, and through that his identity. And so it was always interesting to talk about. And of course, he had a lot of opinions on how amnesia is represented in media. He thought most of it wasn't very good. He thought Memento was pretty good, I will say. And through him, I ended up finding a mentor. Something that because what really meant a lot was that he was tough. He would give you his honest opinion, and I don't know if his brain injury played a role in that. He had no filter whatsoever. He would say exactly what was on his mind, and but it was always good to talk with him. And as far as what I learned from him, something he was always imploring me constantly: write what you know. And that's advice that's easier said than done. It's easy to say that, but I think it takes a while to really understand what that means. But through him and talking with him, I began to understand. Okay, I'm starting to get it, and I've started to become more open in my writing and write about my own experiences. And I remember the feedback I got from him on that. It was really positive, and so I learned a lot from him about what that means to write what you know. It's probably the best advice I got from him. It just took a while to really understand it. So it was always nice to talk with him. It was always nice to get feedback from him, and he would say, "No, this is no good," or "This was really good." And I really tried to listen to him about that, because I really appreciate him taking the time to really give me some feedback on that. He also was a long-time contributor to my pinball magazine, Quarter Up, which I'll be getting the latest issue out here, probably next month. He was our color commentator. He'd grown up with pinball and had lots of opinions on it, so I conclude every issue with some of his thoughts on pinball and how other arcade games didn't quite measure up for him. And I think people really appreciated it. He wrote one about his childhood in Modesto, California, that I think got some very positive was received very well back home in the valley. We had been working on a poetry book and also this novel that he'd written about that was loosely based on his experiences with amnesia. I'd love to publish both of those at some point in the future. And so I remember the last time I drove out to Cope to see his store, and we sat and we talked about our plans for upcoming projects and what had been going on in our lives. And I remember thinking it was about time to leave. It was always hard to leave his store, and he made sure that he always had something else to tell, and one more thing to tell you, which will come up in what I'm about to share here. And I remember I said I gotta go, and I got up and I turned the door to open the back door to his store, and I remember looking back at him, and he just had this look. It was just this look. Said, "Don't leave just yet." But there was a long drive ahead of me, and of course, there's always, I had a busy week ahead of me, and so that was the last time I saw him. One thing that he had shared with me is one of his requests was that somebody read this passage at a memorial service or a funeral for him. Unfortunately, there wasn't a funeral for him back out on the plains of Colorado, so I thought I would share this passage with you today. This is from the autobiography of Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho, which of course is called Once Around the Block. And this is the very last page. And so I just wanted to honor a friend's request and share this bit with you, which he felt was very relevant to his life. So this is Robert Bloch speaking. Autobiographies can also serve the purposes of parlor psychoanalysis In their eyes, my writing can be dismissed as a simple striving for attention, a substitute for the performing career I was unable to follow. It can also serve as an outlet to ventilate fear and release suppressed hostility in serio-comic fashion. While I do not claim to be a candidate for canonization, this account of my personal activities can be seen as a more direct effort to secure approval according to the old-fashioned standards laid down by parents and elders. Don't spit on the sidewalk, pay your bills, keep your bowels open and your pants shut. This is what an analyst might make of my life, but I hope I made more of it than that. Whatever my motivations, I tried to break down the barriers between myself and others, tried to communicate, to entertain. And whatever I did or failed to do, somewhere along the way I found love and friends and satisfaction in work. I managed to enter the magic realms which had enchanted me from the start, even to meet some of the magicians I admired, and live to tell the tale. That in itself is a pleasant realization. In an era where every star of rock, every jock, every politician or other major criminal becomes an instant autobiographer, with a little help from a collaborator, whose name appears in smaller type or not at all, I can still honestly say that my life was my own. They tell me it's not over until the fat lady sings. Well, she's not singing yet, but there are times when I think I can hear her clearing her throat. So now's the time to stop, I guess. But that reminds me. Before I go, there's something I forgot to tell you.